We are going to look at the contents of an EHC plan in this video. At present, there's no national standard format for an EHC plan. However, it must have certain sections that are clearly labelled throughout. These sections are Section A, the views, interests and aspirations of the family and the child or young person. Section B, special education needs, SEM. Section C, health needs related to SEM. Section D, social care needs related to SEM. Section E, outcomes, how the extra help will benefit the child or young person. Section F, the special education provision, the support. Section G, health provision. Section H, social care provision. Section I, the placement, the type and the name of the school or other institute. Section J, personal budget arrangements. Section K, the advice and information, which is a list of all the information gathered during the EHC needs assessment. Only some of the sections within an EHC plan are legally binding. This means that they can be challenged by the families or the young person through the legal process of a tribunal. Section A contains the views, interests and aspirations of the child and their parents or the young person. Section A can be useful in providing a quick summary of the child or young person. It should be based on information given by the family and child or young person. Consider, will Section A give a quick full picture of the child or young person to someone who does not know them? Section A must also include not only the family's aspiration, but those of the child or young person. Aspirations can be anything that they or the child or young person would like to achieve, however unrealistic this may be. Aspirations are not the same as measurable outcomes. Although the local authority must have regard to the views and aspirations, they can't be held to account if these are not achieved. A good example of an aspiration could be, Arthur is 8 and he has hemiplegia. He loves sports and his aspiration is to be a Premier League footballer. This may not be realistic, but everyone agrees that an achievable outcome would be to take part in a disability football tournament with a local club. Section A of an EHC plan is not legally binding. Section B. Section B describes the child or young person's special education needs, what the child or young person has difficulty with. This section may start with a general description of what the child or young person is like. Any formal diagnosis, such as autism spectrum disorder, dyspraxia or cerebral palsy, would be in this section, as will details of any test scores. These are, however, not enough on their own. Section B must specify the actual difficulty the child or young person has because of their condition or disability. Section B is made up with reports that have been gathered during the needs assessment. It is a legal requirement to list all the identified needs. The SEN Code of Practice defines 4 broad areas of SEN, and many local authorities structure the educational section of an EHC plan in this way. The 4 areas are 1. Communication and interaction. 2. Cognition and learning. 3. Social, emotional and mental health. 4. Sensory and physical. This is a good format on how to capture the identified support needs. Using bullet points makes it clear to see the support needs, and when looking further along the EHC plan, making sure that there is a provision for each support need. Bobby has ASD. His strengths are: he can use PECS to communicate his wants and needs. He can tell you when he has pain. His support needs are: he has difficulty with speech and language skills, which impacts his ability to express himself fully and impacts upon this his ability to access the national curriculum. Bobby can only use 2-word sentences. Here are some examples of the sort of things that you may find in section B. Cognition and learning. James has difficulty understanding cause and effect. At age 5, his development is at an 18 to 24 month level. Kafinda has a specific learning difficulty. Jennifer's working memory is at a lower level than her peers. She has difficulty processing information and following complex instructions. Communication and interaction. Pascal has difficulties with the social use of language. He's not able to hold a reciprocal conversation. He's also very literal and can come across rude or abrupt. Ruby's spoken language is at an early stage of development. She can communicate her needs through a mixture of single word gestures and Makaton signing. Social, emotional and mental health. Ahmed has been diagnosed with ADHD. His behaviour can be very impulsive. Jessica has a very high anxiety level. She finds school environment extremely stressful and has had periods of school refusal. She also has a history of self-harming. Sensory and physical. Matthew has a severe visual impairment and is registered blind. Tabitha has cerebral palsy and is in a wheelchair. She can walk very short distances with a walking frame, but cannot manage steps. Section B of the EHC plan is legally binding and can be challenged through a tribunal route. Section C, health needs relating to SEN. Section C contains any healthcare needs related to the child or young person's condition or their special education need. This can be physical or mental health difficulties. For example, difficulties with eating, severe anxiety, or a medical condition such as epilepsy. Routine health issues, for example, dental checkups, do not need to be recorded. Here are some examples of the sort of things you might find in Section C. Angus cannot take any food or drink by mouth, he is peg-fed. Chantel has epilepsy. She mainly has seizures at night, but they can occur during the school day. After a seizure, she is very tired and needs to rest. Abigail has a lowered immune system and gets frequent infections. She may miss more school than the average student, particularly during the winter months. Be aware that if a medical condition gives rise to an education need, these should be listed in Section B. For example, a child with epilepsy may have absent seizures, which causes them to miss information. Section D, social care needs. Section D contains any social care needs related to the child or young person's special education needs and/or disability. These will be things that relate to life in the community and at home. For example, isolation, lack of social opportunities, or behaviour impacting on family life. If there has been a social care assessment, then this information should be included here. A social care assessment can be requested during the needs assessment, but due to different timescales and the criteria for accessing social care support, the assessment may not have taken place or been agreed to at the time of completing the original EHC plan. Any time an assessment from social care can be requested and anything from this added to the EHC plan at a later date. If this is the case, then evidence from the school or community organisations can support any social care needs. Here are some examples of the sort of things you may find in Section D. Joseph is not able to take part in social activities with other teenagers or go out on his own. He currently relies on his parents to take him out and provide support. Amira's challenging behaviour has a severe impact on her family. The family finds it hard to do activities together and her two younger siblings miss out. If Section D is blank, then think about whether any evidence has been missed or further assessment is needed. In some cases, local authorities only put information in Sections D and H where a child was previously known to social care. Section E, the outcomes. Section E contains the outcomes anticipated for your child. The outcomes describe what the child or young person will be able to do as a result of getting the extra help in Sections F to H of the EHC plan. Outcomes should have been discussed and agreed with the parent and carer or the child and young person. There should be a variety of outcomes covering both education, health and social care. Outcomes can be about reaching a particular education level, or there can be things that are important to the child or young person, such as being able to take part in out-of-school activities. The outcomes should be set over different timescales, but should look at ending at the end of key stages or other transition points, for example by the end of the primary school. The outcomes should be measurable and achievable. Beware of those woolly outcomes such as will become more independent or will continue to make progress, especially in English and maths. Here are some examples of the sort of things you might find in Section E. Emily will be able to plan an out-of-school activity with a group of friends by the time she moves on to college. By the end of Year 6, Dion will be able independently to read a simple book with chapters. By the age of 18, Jonathan would have achieved a Level 1 qualification in Maths and English. By the end of Key Stage 1, Parveen will be able to use spoken language to communicate her basic needs. Section F, the special education provision. Section F contains details of the help the child or young person will get in their school or their education setting. This section must specify and quantify. It should be very clear how much help, how often and who will provide or give this help. Section F is important as it's legally enforceable. The local authority has the legal duty to secure the special education provision in the EHC plan. The duty applies regardless of the local authority's resources. From the reports gathered during the assessment, any intervention, teaching methods or equipment that's been recommended should be included in this part. This is the same if there's any mention of staff having special qualifications or training. Every special education need identified in Section B must be matched by a special education provision in Section F. This is a legal requirement. One provision, however, can meet a few of the identified support needs. For example, a social skills group can support with communication needs as well as social or emotional identified support needs. Some good examples of a provision to meet support needs are difficulty understanding the social rules, social skills groups, use of social stories, misses instructions, all learning to be reinforced and repeated, checking back that the child has understood, lack of self-help skills, not yet toilet trained, an individual toileting programme, and adult support to change, becomes overwhelmed by sensory stimulation, a quiet space within a school, Occupational therapy to provide a programme of sensory activities. Difficulty managing transitions and changes to routine. A visual timetable or advance warning of any changes. The provision in F must be specified and should normally be quantified. If the child or young person's EHC plan lists a particular intervention or type of support, the following must be clear. The type of support, how much, how often, and by whom. This should also include any necessary staff qualifications. An example of the sort of things you might find in Section E are a SALT programme will be devised for Jasmine by a SALT. This would be delivered daily by a teacher, LSA and/or school staff. SALT will review the programme termly and up to 6 additional visits a year to support the school if required. Looking at Bobby's identified support needs, we covered in Section B in this video, it would be expected for his provision to look like this. An outcome could be, by the end of Key Stage 2 or Year 2, Bobby will be able to participate in a two-way conversation with a peer. We have this outcome because of the need from Section B, which was Bobby has difficulties with speech and language skills, which impacts his ability to express himself fully and impacts upon his ability to access the national curriculum. The arrangements, the support, the provision that should be in place for Bobby is that he will have a structured speech and language therapist programme set within the school by a speech and language therapist in liaison with any other professionals. And also, who will provide these arrangements? How often will they be delivered? So they will be delivered daily by an LSA and the class teacher, and these will be reviewed half-termly by the speech and language therapists. Section G, Health Provision. Section G is the healthcare provision required as a result of your child's special education need. It should be detailed and specify and should normally quantify. It may include therapies such as audiology, physiotherapy, continence services, specialised nurses, equipment, or training for school staff. A good example would be Carly will continue to attend the paediatric diabetics clinic every 6 months. Before she starts school, the specialist diabetic nurse will deliver 2 training sessions to school staff. It's important for the EHC plan to give a full picture of the child and young person's health needs that may affect them in their school or other education setting. If the child or young person already has an individual healthcare plan, that should be incorporated into Section G or at least cross-referenced to. The commissioning body, ICS, must agree what is in Section G. Once they do, it's legally enforceable, but they may refuse to agree to the provision that is not being commissioned locally. Section H1 and 2, Social Care Provision. Section H is social care provision. This section can be extremely complicated. H is divided into 2 subsections, H1 and H2. If social needs have been identified in Section D, the local authority needs to establish which of these are eligible needs for children under 18 under Section 2 of the Chronicle Sick and Disabled Persons Act. These needs are then placed in Section H1. For example, help in the home, personal care or eating, support to access the community such as after-school clubs or play schemes. This includes community-based short break schemes, assistance with travel to access the community, and adaptations to the home. Any services required under this Act must be provided regardless of resources. Once a child or family has been assessed as eligible for support under the 1970 Act, there is a duty to provide them with services to meet their assessed need. Subsection H2 is any other social care provision. For example, this could include residential short breaks for children or other social care provision not related to the child or young person's sent, but only with the parental consent. For example, a child protection plan. Or any social care provision for adults over the age of 18 which is being provided for by the Carer Act 2014. Local authorities are required to seek advice and information about social care needs as part of the EHC needs assessment, but the request for a social care assessment can be made at any time. There may be instances where Section H is completely blank. In some cases this is fine. Section H is particularly important where young people require support in order to achieve as much independence as possible in adulthood. Some young people or some adults may have a mixture of a package of education and social care support needs. Section I, placement. Section I will contain the type and the name of school or college. For example, a mainstream primary school, such as Hillview School, a secondary special school for pupils with severe learning difficulties, Lakeside School. If in this section the type of provision is included, such as mainstream or special school, then this is legal. The actual name of the school can be added at a later date. Section I can be challenged legally through the tribunal if needed to. Section J. When the local authority informs that they will be issuing an EHC plan, the parent or carer or young person has the right to ask for a personal budget to be prepared. This can also be requested at any annual review. This is not an extra pot of money, but a way of giving a parent or young person more input into how the money allocated to them or their child is spent. Personal budgets may relate to education, health or social care, and each case is looked at individually. Section K, the reports. Section K contains all the reports or advices gathered as part of the assessment process or at reviews. This is also referred to as an appendix. The child's needs or young person and provision in the EHC plan should be based upon these reports. EHC plan checklist. Things to think about whilst reviewing and completing an EHC plan are: is the plan clear, concise and easy to read? Does it include the parental, carers and the child or young person views? Is the child or young person's special education, health and social care needs clearly detailed? Are the outcomes SMART? Are they linked to the aspirations and broken down into smaller steps? Is the description of the education, health and social care provision detailed, specified and quantified? The EHC plan should clearly state who will do what, how often, for how long and for what purpose. Is the provision relevant to the outcomes? Is there provision for each special education need? The annual review of the EHC plan. The plan must be reviewed at least once a year. At the end of the review, the local authority may make changes to the EHC plan. They may cease it or leave it unchanged. How long does the EHC plan last? The EHC plan will remain in place until the child turns 25 or leaves education, or the local authority decides that the child or young person no longer needs the EHC plan to help them with their education. If the young person moves into higher education, the EHC plan will cease. If the child or young person moves to another local authority, the plan will be transferred to this new local authority.